Jim Parsons was at the peak of his game. Sheldon Cooper, the character he played, was the most significant aspect of The Big Bang Theory. He helped the show get 18 million viewers per episode. Forbes says you're the highest paid TV actor in the world, and you made $1 million every time the cameras rolled. Then Jim got a contract for $50 million that blew his head. Jim said no, even if all he had to do was play Sheldon for a few more seasons. And this is because of a sinister motive that has to do with The Big Bang Theory. Jim Parsons thought that summer 2018 would be normal, but it wasn't. Parsons himself said that the events that unfolded during those terrible months between seasons 11 and 12 were so vivid and overwhelming that they felt almost cosmic. When everything happened at once, the longest-running multi-camera sitcom in TV history was over. Let's begin with the sadness. Jim and his husband, Todd Spiewak, had 2 pets. They had been raising them together since Jim was 31. One of the dogs, who was 14 years old, was dying. Jim was in New York City at this time, working hard in The Boys and the Band revival, which had 8 Broadway plays a week. He wasn't only on Broadway, though. He would fly back to Los Angeles whenever he needed to film, and then he would go back to New York for another week of performances. The routine was quite hard, and his dog's health was getting worse very quickly. He talked about one walk in the park immediately before he had to shoot a commercial. The dog looked awful. Parsons was worn out, emotionally drained, and barely able to keep it together. His husband Todd reminded him that they had plans and that everyone had changed their schedules to fit him in. Jim broke down in tears since he wasn't there for the dog he had lived with for 14 years. But what other option did he have? Jim was at the top of his game at this point. He was more than just a TV star. He was a big deal, and everyone in Hollywood wanted a piece of his fame. Jim was balancing work and taking care of his dog, and he and Todd had to make the sad decision to put their dog to sleep at home the next day. At this moment, it seemed like Jim could move on from this, but he couldn't. And while he was still grieving for his dog, something else happened. Jim broke his foot badly a few days after putting his dog to sleep. He was back on stage singing The Boys and the Band. Even so, he didn't halt the concert and kept going despite being in a lot of agony. He went to the hospital afterward and realized something scary. The body is weak and can break at any time. This actor needs to be able to move around for his parts. And now he had an injury that could end his career. Jim felt like he was looking into a bottomless pit. What would have happened if he couldn't come back on stage? What would the producers do? How would he deal with letting down everyone who counted on him? He got better, though, and went back on stage. But he still thought about how weak he was, and that scared him. Then the real fear began. This is where it gets worse. Jim's dad passed away when Jim was 52. Jim was only 26 years old at the time. Parsons turned 45 in 2018. He began to perform the math. If he signed a deal for season 14, he would be 47 years old, which is only 5 years younger than his father was when he died. Parsons said on his podcast that he isn't superstitious or anything like that. It was merely a matter of context. He dubbed it context. But what he truly meant was death, the clock, and the end line that no one talks about but everyone is afraid of. His dad never turned 53. What if Parsons only had 6 more years to live? Did he want to spend those years that can't be replaced, in the same soundstage wearing the same superhero t-shirts? He couldn't stop thinking about the subject and was desperate to find answers. It seems that Sheldon doesn't know everything after all. Todd, on the other hand, constantly encouraging them to work on new creative ventures together. They started That's Wonderful Productions in 2015, and it had already signed a big overall deal with Warner Brothers Television. But Jim was never free. He was always filming, always acting, and always busy with something else. Todd wanted to make this production company they had founded and use it. But Jim had to shoot 8 episodes of The Big Bang Theory in Los Angeles over the course of around 22 weeks of filming. He also performed 8 times a week on Broadway in New York. Then, to make things even more dramatic, he went on to play Henry Wilson in the Netflix limited series Hollywood. That's a few more weeks of heavy shooting. Jim was always going from one coast to the other, learning new scripts and playing completely different characters. He had to keep the exact timing needed for both TV and live theater. He also had a business deal with Intel that made him work during what should have been his week off. He was very tired. His body and mind begged him to relax. He was absolutely worn out from all of his responsibilities. Then he started to wonder if he could give The Big Bang Theory more years. He had an answer now. It was time to stop. In August 2018, Jim returned to Los Angeles after that nightmare summer in New York. He'd been carrying this decision around like a weight for weeks. He knew what he had to do. He went to Chuck Lorre's house on a Sunday. Chuck Lorre is the co-creator of The Big Bang Theory. Jim sat down and told Chuck that he wouldn't be signing for seasons 13 and 14. Chuck understood right once, and according to several accounts, he was supportive and even kind about the choice. But he also said something that both guys already understood. Sheldon Cooper was needed for the show to go on. The whole idea, including the name, The Big Bang Theory, was based on Sheldon's work in theoretical physics. No Sheldon, no show. Chuck didn't try to talk Parsons out of it. He didn't give him extra money. He just went along with it. A few days later, Jim brought the cast into his dressing room after a table read. Johnny Galecki, Kay Cuoco, music, Simon Helberg, Kunal Nair, Mayim Bialik, and Melissa Rauch. They were the people he'd worked with for over a decade, his television family. He told them the same thing he told Chuck. Everyone wept. Johnny Galecki later said he was blindsided. Not because of Jim's choice, but because he went to the creators first instead of talking to his castmates about it first. At that time, they were like family. Jim should have gone to them first, though. Maybe if he had, he would have understood Johnny was exhausted, too. Johnny was also starting to doubt his ability to do well after so long. People who were saddened by the decision at first came to see that Jim might have been the only one brave enough to speak it out loud. On August 22, 2018, CBS and Warner Brothers said that Season 12 would be the final for the longest-running multi-camera sitcom in TV history. Not due of the ratings, which were still huge. The authors were not out of ideas, they still had stories to tell. But one performer, who was the heart of the program, just said no. So, it wasn't just one moment that made Jim leave the show. It was a mix of things, like how the scenes of The Big Bang Theory weren't as new after being on the air for so long. But that duration made the cast feel like they were a part of the show. Kay Cuoco wrote on Instagram that she was crying a lot. Mayim Bialik wrote about how thankful she was, even if it was hard. Everyone in the entertainment business was shocked, and people started to ask questions. Why would he leave what could be worth? Giving up that much money and success, this is where things start to get complicated. Rumors began to spread that CBS had given Jim $50 million to do 2 more seasons. That statistic was repeated again and over in every entertainment medium until it was regarded as true. But Jim later made something clear that was really significant. There really wasn't a contract like that, and Jim hadn't said no to that type of money. Would he have stayed if he had been offered that much money? CBS was in early talks for seasons 13 and 14. If the contract went through, the cast, notably the 5 main characters, were set to get about $50 million each, including profits. But Jim made his choice before any contracts were signed. Sheldon Cooper's story came to an end at the end of season 12. He had gotten the Nobel Prize. He was married to Amy Farrah Fowler. He had changed from a strict, socially awkward genius into someone who could really love and be friends with others. In one of the most emotional speeches in sitcom history, Johnny made up with his friends. Jim said it was like finishing a fantastic book. You don't add more chapters merely because people like the book. You let the story come to a conclusion. He did what he said he would do. He looked around and chose to leave. But he did it with style. 18.5 million people watched the 2-hour finale of The Big Bang Theory live. In the days that followed, millions more watched it online. It became one of the most popular scripted endings of the last 10 years. A fitting finish to a show that had been on TV for 12 years. Jim was scared he had made the wrong choice by leaving, but he said he never regretted it. Do you believe what he says? Jim Parsons was just a youngster from Texas who acted in plays before he became the highest paid actor on TV? Jim was born on March 24, 1973, in Houston and grew up in Spring, a suburb to the north. His mother was a teacher. His father owned a business that sold plumbing supplies. He had a regular family in childhood, with the exception of one incident. Jim aspired to be an actor since he was 6 years old. He played the Coca-Cola bird in a school play of The Elephant's Child. And something clicked. Not only did he like it, he was sure, like most 6-year-olds aren't, that this was what he was meant to accomplish with his life. But after high school, worry started to set in. He attempted to give it all up, then. He went to the University of Houston, although at first he stayed away from theater. They thought it was too dangerous to work in that field. It looked like he made a smart and responsible choice. It was the kind of choice that makes parents feel better at night. It lasted for about 2 years. Jim understood one thing. When he wasn't acting, he was quite unhappy. So, he switched his major to theater and never looked back. Jim was very busy while he was at the University of Houston. He acted in 17 plays over the course of 3 years. He even helped start Infernal Bridegroom Productions, a theater group that put on scores of shows before shutting in 2007. He started performing at the Stage's Repertory Theater in Houston on a regular basis. This guy was crazy. Jim felt he needed extra training when he graduated. He applied to graduate schools and got into a very difficult 2-year program at the University of San Diego, which was taught in collaboration with the Old Globe Theater. That year, only 7 students were accepted. Rick Sear, the program director, later said that he had doubts about letting Parsons in. Jim has a really unique personality. One reason he's been so successful is that he's completely original. But we were scared that it wouldn't work in classical theater. It did, in fact. In 2001, Parsons got his Master of Fine Arts degree and then relocated to New York City right away to follow his aspirations. Jim Parsons didn't have a good time in New York. He had a lot of trouble. He thinks he tried out for 15 to 30 television pilots. He would sometimes get cast in a pilot, but no network would pick it up. He would sometimes get to the callbacks and then get turned down. There were occasions when he didn't even make it past the first round. He made a living by working in off-Broadway theater and doing TV ads. He got a little part on the show Ed in 2002. He had a small part in the indie movie Garden State in 2004. He landed a recurring part on Judging Amy in 2004. These weren't significant breaks. These were jobs that barely paid the rent and helped people stay alive. He then tried out for a new CBS sitcom called The Big Bang Theory in 2006. Jim read the pilot script and right away felt a strange connection. It wasn't the person who played the character. Jim has remarked several times that he didn't feel like he knew Sheldon Cooper as a person. The conversation was what made it. He went into the audition and gave a performance that was so exact and so well-tuned that creator Chuck Lorre asked him to try again. Lorre wanted to make sure that Jim could accomplish what he had just done again, that it wasn't a one-time thing. Jim did it again when he got back. The same accuracy, timing, and strange alchemy that would define Sheldon Cooper for 12 seasons. So, he got the music part. When The Big Bang Theory initially aired on September 24, 2007, the reviews were mixed at first. People who didn't like the show about socially awkward scientists didn't know what to think of it, but audiences enjoyed it. By the 3rd season, it was CBS's most popular show, with more than 12 million people watching each episode. Jim was getting prizes like other folks get coffee mugs. In 2010, 2011, 2013, and 2014, he won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. In 2011, he won a Golden Globe. From 2009 until 2014, he was nominated for Emmys every year. His pay showed that he was in charge. In 2010, he and his co-stars Johnny Galecki and Kay Cuoco signed contracts that promised them $200,000 for each episode. By 2014, that figure had grown to $1 million every episode and more than 1% of the show's profits. Forbes said that Jim was the highest paid TV actor in the world from 2015 to 2018. He made $27.5 million in 2017 alone. Not bad for a kid from Houston who spent years living on the streets in New York. He never stopped doing theater, even after he was a big star on TV. In 2011, he made his Broadway debut in Larry Kramer's The Normal Heart, a musical about the AIDS crisis. For Jim, a gay man who had been with his boyfriend Todd Spywax since 2002, the project was very personal to music. In 2012, he played Lud P. Dow in a new version of Harvey. He played God in An Act of God in 2015. That was the same year he decided to leave The Big Bang Theory. He was in the Broadway show The Boys in the Band on its 50th anniversary. The Tony Award for Best Revival of a Play went to that production in 2018. In the 2020 movie version, all of the actors, including Parsons, played the same parts. Jim never had to choose between TV and the theater. He somehow did both at the same time with equal dedication and skill, music, until his body and mind ultimately told him to slow down. Do you think he would still be filming The Big Bang Theory if he had given up theater? The universe of The Big Bang Theory didn't stop when the program ended in 2019. The first show was Young Sheldon, which was a prequel that ran for 7 seasons and ended in 2024. Parsons was the narrator and executive producer, although he didn't show up on camera until the last episode of the series. Then there was Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, which is now a spin-off on CBS. But the main thing that everyone wants to know about is the new spin-off, Stewart Fails to Save the Universe. This show is crazy. HBO Max is presently making it, and it's the first Big Bang Theory spin-off that isn't a prequel. The story takes place in the present and follows Stuart Bloom, a comic book store owner who is always unlucky. Kevin Sussman plays him. The official description says that Stuart smashes a device that Sheldon and Leonard made, which unwittingly starts a multiverse Armageddon. He has to fix reality now, and along the way, he meets parallel world versions of characters from The Big Bang Theory. Lauren Lapkus plays Denise Stewart's girlfriend again in the movie. Brian Posehn is returned as Barry Kripke, the geologist, and John Ross Bowie is back as Barry Kripke. The idea also talks about the device that Sheldon and Leonard made, which suggests that 2 characters are very important to the story. So, is Jim Parsons going to show up? Parsons has made his point known in a number of recent interviews. He won't be. But is this just a trick to get people to buy something? Jim isn't entirely shutting the door on coming back. Does he want to come back? Here's the thing: Stewart doesn't save the universe. There is a way to bring back Sheldon, Leonard, and the rest of the original cast without having them play the same parts again, since it includes parallel universes and numerous realities. They may play Sheldons from alternative timelines, bad universes, or Sheldons who made different decisions. The idea of the multiverse gives writers a lot of freedom to do what they want. Sheldon's tale may be over, but there are still a lot of Sheldon stories, music, that haven't been written yet because of the multiverse. We don't know yet if Jim will use that loophole. When asked directly about Jim and Johnny Galecki coming back, Chuck Lurie, the creator of the franchise, has been very vague. He doesn't say yes or no, which normally signifies that discussions are still going on in Hollywood. Jim hasn't been taking it easy since he left The Big Bang Theory. He played Michael again in the movie version of The Boys in the Band in 2020. He was nominated for an Emmy for his role as Henry Wilson in the Netflix limited series Hollywood. He was in the romance drama Spoiler Alert in 2022. It was about a relationship that was damaged by terminal cancer. Music: critics loved Parsons' delicate, devastating performance in the movie. Parsons went back to Broadway in 2024 to star in productions of Mother Play in Our Town. For his role in Mother Play, he was nominated for a Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Play. He has also continued to work as the executive producer and narrator for the Big Bang Theory series, which keeps him connected to Sheldon Cooper without having to wear superhero t-shirts. People want to see Sheldon Cooper again. The character is well known. Parsons' performance set the standard for TV comedies of the time. Bazinga became a part of our culture. Sheldon's location on the couch became a holy place. But would it be worth it to bring Sheldon back?